Good morning, David.
Well, hello, Christopher. Are you well?
Oh, I think we're doing very well, thank you, yes.
Good. Yeah, good. And Rural Ministries keeping you busy during August, I hope?
Yeah, no let up. No let up at all.
I enjoyed our meeting we had with Zoom with some of our colleagues the other day about the Mel Plus show. I'm looking forward to being at the Mel Plus show in August. Are you?
Yes, and dear viewer, it'd be great for you to come along and see us and say hello.
Yes.
I think it's stand 58.
In fact, it's a Thursday, Chris. We could record Rev Chat while we're there, couldn't we?
Now that would be a challenge.
We'll see. We'll have a think about it. See if we can do that. We could record it at the Mel Plus show.
We'll try. We'll see what we can do.
We will.
If you want to come and visit us, it's stand C58 is our stand.
You won't miss it. You won't miss it because Chris is having a big banner made for us saying Salisbury Diocese, Lyme Bay Deanery, making Jesus known.
Yep, there we go. I'm just waiting on permission from the diocese for all the official logo colours and stuff.
There we are. They'll love it. So, yeah, Mel Plus show. It's a day I can't forget, the 24th of August.
And why can't you forget it?
It's my birthday.
So there we go. Everybody, let's set a challenge. How many birthday cards can we give David
No.
show on stand C58?
Yeah, and it is also the Feast of St. Bartholomew, far more important than my birthday.
But Bartholomew won't be there. We can come and visit David in person.
No, Bartholomew will be there in spirit, Chris. I'm sure of that. Good old Barty, we like a bit of Bart. However, nobody knows anything about
times we could sing Happy Birthday to David at the Mill Platform.
Yeah, that's a bit worth doing, wouldn't it? So just bring the cakes. That's more important.
On the hour.
Bring the cakes, Chris. That's the important thing.
Bring the cakes. David wants cakes for his birthday.
Cakes and candles. Having said that, the number of candles you'd need for my cake could be a fire hazard, so you better not do that. So come and see us, 24th of August. It's the Thursday Mel show. It'll be the first one I've ever been to, Chris. I've never been to the Mel Plus show, surprisingly.
Yeah, it's my
in all the years, because
it's my third.
Having done 10 years as rural chaplain to the Shropshire and West Mid show, I kind of had a break. But there we are. This year, I should be back into the world of agricultural shows.
So you've come back to find out how it should be done in the south.
I should be waiting amazed to see how you do it, Chris. Anyway, there we are. So we're all good. Everything in the Lyme Bay area is good, apart from the weather. It's a bit miserable for holidaymakers, sadly.
Yeah, we're having a bit of a headache on Loader's Fate this weekend because of all the wind and blowing the tents down and things.
The wind is a problem to many people at the moment.
Yes,
and so yes, but there we are. So
rain's a problem to the farmers.
The rain is a problem to the farmers. Although some want rain, others don't want rain. But there we are. The cows don't mind the rain, do they, Chris?
The cows don't. No, it's I think it's the wheat crop that's suffering at the moment.
It is. I've seen some very damaged ones, flattened by the rain and the wind. There we are. So today, dear viewer, Chris is really excited because we're going to be thinking about Sunday's theme, which is the Feast of the Transfiguration. Am I not correct, Chris?
This is correct. And as both David and I said, it seems to be a feast that we all need to talk about many, many times in the year, because some years it comes up 3 times in the year.
Twice on a Sunday, at least once in midweek.
Yeah. So we've got to think of something new to say.
Or we could just take the Quaker approach, Chris, couldn't we?
Yes, we could. A bit of quiet meditation.
Yeah, on the reading, which you're going to do, I understand, when we've had a pause.
We're going to have a pause, which would be a great time for David and I to think, now, what are we going to say about the Transfiguration that we haven't said before? So the reading is Luke chapter 9. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James, and he went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen.
Ooh. Well,
I suppose my first lesson on saying something different that I haven't said at the Transfiguration before is I don't think I've mentioned that all started with prayer.
it did.
Jesus, Peter, John, and James, they actually went up the mountain to pray.
It did.
Jesus didn't say, "Come to the top of the mountain and see me be clothed in glory." He said, "Come, let's go and pray." That's my lesson. Go and pray. And then strange things happen.
Up a mountain, if preferable.
Well, there's plenty of hills around West Dorset.
I was saying, I think yesterday, I was saying to Chris when we came on to the recording, wasn't I, that I'd recorded the thought for the Beaminster Team online service this week. And I found myself thinking, why on earth would you take 2 or 3 blokes up a mountain to pray? Couldn't they have sat by a lake or around a campfire on a beach or something? Far easier, isn't it?
It is far easier.
So why did he go up a mountain? Now, that's an interesting question. I'm not expecting you to answer, unless you'd like to do so, Chris. But why did he go up?
The theory was the top of a hill was closer to God.
Ah, there you are, you see. Greater to glory, greater to God. So you didn't have to shout so loud when you were praying?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I do need to go and shout loudly on top of a hill for my prayers today.
Yeah, why not? Get a megaphone.
Do you think God will hear me better?
No. I think God hears you anyway, Chris. You know that.
I think I agree with you.
You know, I think God, but it would be interesting to go on a mountain and shout prayers, because others up there may hear and think, "What's going on? I'm going to have a look in this and investigate." So it could be a tool of growing the kingdom, making Jesus known here now. A bit like in the cathedral where everything at 12 o'clock stops, and for 1 minute or a few minutes they have a silence and prayer. All the visitors are asked to stand and to take part. So it's a good witness to the prayer is central to what we're doing. But anyway, there they are, up a mountain. Then comes my favourite moment in the whole of the Bible, doesn't it? The stupid statement, "Shall I make you 3 houses while you're up there?" And we've discussed this before, because what have they got on the Mount of the Transfiguration today, Chris?
One great big church with a chapel for Moses and Elijah.
Yeah.
A coffee shop.
Yeah.
And a gift shop.
And a gift shop, yeah. The church is rather spectacular, though, isn't it?
The church is rather spectacular. And I must admit, one of my green stoles was purchased in that gift shop. And I think that's
there,
something I talk about nearly every time I talk about the Transfiguration.
So, although I say poor disciples, stupid thing again, Peter again, because Joe knows, you haven't forgotten Joe, have you, viewer? You remember she was the person who used to appear with us from time to time? We'll get her back one day. She used to think I got a downer on Peter because I said he always said stupid things and whatever. But perhaps he was quite prophetic, because many years later, there they are, as you say, one big church with a special chapel for Elijah and Moses, and then the two other buildings to make three. So they're up there praying, which is good. I think the key to all of that is this is the voice from the cloud saying, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. Listen to him."
Yeah.
I think we do a lot of talking, Chris, you and I, and other people. And we do a lot of praying because we know that God will hear us. We believe that devoutly. But I just wonder how much we encourage not just those who we pray with, but ourselves to listen to him.
Are you going to go to the old adage of you've got two ears and one mouth?
I wasn't, but you said it, so well done. I don't think we listen. If we joked early, didn't we, about because we didn't know what to say, we could take the Quaker approach and sit and ponder, think.
Yeah.
One of my favourite words in the Bible, Mary pondered on all of these things. We don't ponder enough, I don't think, today. As a sense of I think that we've lost that sense of awe and wonder of the beauty and the magnificence of God and things around us that we just stop and think on. I think if I was at the top of the mountain with Jesus, that's what I'd want to do, is to stop and just ponder on the magnificence of what was going on and why I was up there.
So your downer on Peter isn't actually that's what Peter wanted to do. This is such a wow moment. This is such a magnificent moment.
Yeah.
Let us let's put something here as a reminder of how spectacular Jesus is. So
and of course, the whole idea, I think that what Jesus would do was another part of that preparation to tell them, this is what is going to happen, this is where I'm going to go on to. And it's followed, if I remember correctly, is it followed immediately by the story of Jesus clearing the demons out of the young boy? I think it is. As part of,
No.
I think it is. That there might be biblical knowledge is the greatest in the world compared to some, but Jesus taken there to actually start to prepare them, and the fact that Moses and Elijah, the two great fathers of the Judaic tradition, the one from which our faith has developed and grown, I think the reason for meeting them there is that they're part of what Jesus is about and what God is about, and about moving on. And Jesus is partly telling them. Now, I did find myself saying, and I'm sorry, viewer, if you haven't, you're waiting especially for this great moment in the online service. I did find myself saying that I wonder what our going up the mountain moment is. Have we had that moment for ourselves where we've been up the mountain with Jesus, and what did it feel like? And how did it feel? And perhaps if we don't recognise that, we can start to consider what possibly is that mountain moment for us. What is our faith about? How are we called to make people known to Jesus, or make Jesus known to people? Your idea of going up the mountain and shouting, I think it's a great idea, Chris. Perhaps that's what we need to do more often, is not be too afraid or scared of declaring what we believe and why we believe it, and being prepared to shout about it. The message, after all, as I've said before, it's too good to keep to ourselves, isn't it? I believe.
Oh, I think so, yeah. I mean, there's also an amazing time. You just go to the top of the mountain and look at God's wonderful creation. I know many people that will go for a walk in the woods and just be marveled at how God created stuff and feel really connected with God. There are times to just listen and go, wow. And there are times to stand up and tell other people, actually, you know what, I found something rather good here.
Yeah.
Um,
and I mean, the key thing is, if you're not careful, you can get hung up on some of the little bits of the story. And if we're honest, we don't know what they mean. We can only try and suppose or put a reason, to find a reason. The bit about, the mist came down, the voice came from the cloud, and all this. This idea of the God's somewhere up there. That's what I did assembly a few weeks ago at Mapperton School, and we were looking at what heaven was like, and somebody said it's just like the cloud. God sits on the cloud, and that's heaven. And that's that kind of idea. The voice comes through the cloud and the mist and all that was going on up there. But the voice is important. It is God talking to us. And for me, the real key is, if we're not careful, we miss it.
If we're not prepared to listen, we miss it.
Yeah, we ask, we talk. We, sometimes demand of God, maybe, sometimes just, out of pity or out of dire need, we cry to God. But if we don't listen, as you quite rightly have just said, we miss what he's saying to us. And I think the thing I've learned about prayer is that just because I ask one thing, God doesn't always answer it in the way that I want, but he does answer it. And sometimes you find that many years later, because you realise what I'd asked for, the solution has suddenly been seen and things have been resolved. So it's how we ask, not to just expect that everything's just going to be answered because we demand of it, but that God does hear and does truly transform our lives through answering the prayer we want, but not always in the way that we would like it.
Which is then also a constant reminder to us to keep praying.
Keep praying. Keep praying.
I'm always amazed, well, not always, but maybe quite recently, is actually how my prayers change me. If I skip my morning prayers, my day is always very different.
They are.
Than if I spend a good time in my morning prayers.
Absolutely.
And that's my attitude rather than anybody else's. So prayer is good for us. It's good for God, and it's good for all the people around us, as well as actually our prayers help prepare other people to hear God's message.
I think the key thing about it is people often think, don't they, Chris, that you or I or other people in our position are like professional prayers. And years gone by in ancient history of the church, you could pay the vicar to pray for your soul, and then go on living your lousy life because you didn't have to do it yourself. You were getting somebody to do it for you. But I'm not a professional prayer. I do so because, as you say, because I realise the importance for me in that relationship with God that it is. And yes, like you say, it is different if you don't do it. But whether you're praying on top of a mountain, up a hill, in a cold church in the winter on your own, I've sat in many of those praying on my own because no one else comes to join me. Whether you sit in the warmth of your living room in silence and prayer, the key thing is that you are doing it and God is listening.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? I think sometimes, I've got a little thing on the bottom of my Pew's news sheet every week that says a Say One For Me campaign, whereas anybody can send me an email and I will add you to my prayer list and pray for you. Yeah. And sometimes I think actually as we come to church, people put some money in the pot, they say a few prayers, ask Vicar to say a few prayers, and go home and still live the lifestyle that they used to live. Whereas truly listening to God and praying is life transforming.
Yeah.
And we can't go back to the way we were because God transforms us. And maybe that is actually a huge transformation representation of the Transfiguration. Peter, James and John, I'm sure after they went up that mountain and met the transfigured Jesus and the voice of God, came back down again, not the same.
Yeah, different people.
Our challenge when we come to church on a Sunday morning, or evening, or afternoon, or midweek, or just say our prayers wherever we are, up a mountain, in our studies, in churches, that we come out of those prayers transformed because we've met the Holy God.
And I've often said, Chris, that if at the end of a service, the people who we've been leading worship with and for don't feel changed in some way, then perhaps we haven't quite hit the right spot or done our job properly. I think that is very key, that there is a transfiguration moment for all of us through worship, that we need to have seen or heard the experience of having been with God at that moment. That's what we're doing. We're actually with God at that moment.
I think one of my first ever parochial church council meetings, when I think I was 18, I made the comment of, if people walk out the door of church saying, today I've met the Holy God, they'll want to come back.
Mm.
And God is present in church. I know you'll say God's present everywhere. Of course he is. But it is a special place that helps us encounter God. Not just thinking about God on a big white fluffy cloud with a big long beard.
Mm-hmm.
But if God's love, God's all about us, God's spirit's in the air, it helps us connect with the Holy God, meet and realise just what a God he is. And there's where our point of transfiguration is.
Yeah, I'm sure, Chris, that everybody, and you all know your own place. We all have our own transfiguration place, don't we? Mountain place. And somewhere where we feel that, as you say, yeah, the people in the wood. I had a lady many years ago in New Toxeter when I was a curate who used to say that she felt more in tune with God when she was out walking a dog in the morning through a particular field, because it was vast and open and the sky was clear and blue. And she felt, for her, that was the moment where she... And Joe and I have often referred to the fact that the Hilary Chapel in the church in Beaminster, for us, is a very thin place. We really do feel the power of God's presence there, perhaps more than in some other places. Others, it could be on the beach at West Bay or down at West Bexington or wherever it may be, the Golden Cap. It may be on top of Coleman Hill with the lovely trees or whatever. But you'll all have your place where you perhaps feel that bit closer to God, where you feel that's where you really commune with him. And keep on doing that and help others to know as well. So Transfiguration, Chris, I think we found something different to say to what we said in the past.
I think we have. It's been quite an interesting chat, hasn't it?
An interesting chat, and we always love to hear from you, viewers. Do let us know. Perhaps let us know where your thin place, your transfiguration place is. We'd love to know where it is you feel most close to God, in prayer or in spirit, or just where you feel his presence in your lives. I'll let you into one last thing. I had one lady that she felt closer to God every morning after her breakfast when she stood at the sink washing up her breakfast dishes, just looking out into the garden, into the distance. How about that?
Oh, I think I might drop that hint to Julia.
Good. I was going to say, Chris, you're very brave. I wouldn't mention my wife and the sink in the same question. I was going to say that I've never quite encountered God over the washing up in the same way, but that lady genuinely, she was a lady whose husband had died. She was on her own in the house, and she said, I said to her, was that feeling only because the washing up got done quicker? She said, I never even noticed it's being done.
But also, actually, washing up is a very interesting thing, because we all need to eat and be fed. When we eat and fed, it leaves our plates dirty. You stand at the sink.
Yeah.
You put the dirty plate in the bowl of washing up. You wipe away all the dirt. You use the washing up suds. It comes out shining clean.
That's another sermon for another day, Chris. Hold on to it, don't you? Ammunition in one day. I'm sure we'd give it.
I've never thought of the transfiguration like that. Well, that's going to be next year's transfiguration.
And I'm sure Harry's now got a title for the service. Sorry for the rev chat. Anyway, Chris, as ever, it's been great to see you. By the way, how did the wedding go? I meant to, because your son, you were conducting the service. Your son, how did the wedding go?
The wedding was a brilliant day. We all had a lot of fun, but it did start raining half an hour before the service.
Oh no!
And it rained all day and all night.
Oh no!
But we all had fun anyway.
There must be a wedding story in that, but we're not going to think about it today. We'll wait for the appropriate week of Rev Chat. Yeah. Chris, good to see you. Hopefully Debs will be back with us soon. Don't forget the Mel Platt show and get on with the washing up. See you all soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.